can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I'm here with Rob Buffington of GordianStaffing.com. And Rob, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. There's some recent ones. You know, I have 8 top agency series, I have a top SaaS series. There's one in particular lately, Sujan Patel, who founded Mailshake, and he talks about how he grew that company, how he's buying other companies in the SaaS space. And I think when we talked, they have over 70,000 customers for that business. So it's pretty remarkable. And we'll get into some acquisition stuff today with Rob. And before we do, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do strategy, accountability, and the full production execution to make sure everything happens. We call ourselves, I guess, the magic elves behind the scenes. So, for me, Rob, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com. We've been doing it for over a decade now and love it. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce Rob Buffington. And he grew a remote staffing company from 25 to 400 employees in 2 years, clients in 27 states, worth over $5 million. Currently he owns 7 companies with offices in 8 states in 3 countries. And each is run remotely, which is pretty remarkable. And we'll talk about also, they really have a philosophy of giving, and each company engages in profit sharing and charitable giving with, over 6 figures in charity just from some companies alone. So Rob, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Let's
start off with, there's so many to dig into, like I mentioned, 7 different companies, but let's start off with Gordian Staffing and talk about what you do there.
Sure. Gordian Staffing, very simply, is a recruiting company. We find the best talent regardless of where they are. We have offices in Mexico City, Guadalajara, and we have a satellite office in Manila. And as you said, we have over 400 employees that we've placed with clients in 27 states on a permanent basis. People tend to think of call centers, things like that. That's not what we provide. We provide college-educated, skilled employees that happen to live a little farther away, that can be very valuable members of the team.
So what type of positions are common for people to come to you for?
You would be surprised. Most people assume it's data entry or something like that, but customer service is very popular. Admin assistants, accounting, personal assistants. But we also have vice presidents and office managers and controllers, and we have very skilled people that assist companies. And the best part is that they hire people at one level and they grow with the company. So after 2 or 3 years, they have reached higher levels.
Yeah, I mentioned, again, we're talking about 7 companies. Where does this fall in the evolution of your business journey?
This was my 4th company. And as with most, I was my own first customer. And it worked so well for me that I told other people about it. They wanted to give it a try, and they've been very generous to us and have grown with us.
What was the original idea? What were you experiencing with which of the businesses that allowed you to kind of use it for yourself?
At the time, I had 2 property management companies and a building services company in California. And like so many people today, I was having staffing problems. And this was pre-COVID. This was 2016, 2017. So just, I know how bad it is today, but it's been bad for a while. And after having repeated turnover in a position and just not being able to keep employees and dealing with the EDD in California and the unemployment, just all the hoops to jump through, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I've been hiring people out of Mexico. You should give it a try." And so I did. And that was April. And by August, I had 10 people. Uh, and then I just kept hiring. I never fired anybody. I kept growing the companies. And as positions would open up, I'd ask myself, is this something that can be done remotely? And it was just absolutely game changing. We were able to staff more people, so the quality got better. And then because I saved money, I had more to pay the domestic employees so I could keep and retain the best talent. So it was just win-win.
So I want to go back to the beginning of your journey when I won't ruin the story, but I know that you end up buying a business, but you were trying to do other things up until you were buying that business. What was going on at that point?
Sure. So I've always wanted to solve problems. I've always looked at new ways of doing things. And in the crash of '08, I started buying short sale properties. I was in college at the time, and I was able to I bought my first property for $69,000. And then I bought another, and I bought another, and it just kind of grew. And so the logical leap there was to get into property management for other people. The problem was I was in a catch-22. I was in my mid-20s. I had no experience, and nobody would hire me because I didn't have experience, but I couldn't get experience because nobody would hire me. I even went so far as offering to work for free for 6 months to a property management company if they would let me learn, but I still couldn't get any takers. And so when a property management came up for sale in San Jose, California, I reached out and bought it. And in hindsight, it feels very reckless, but it turned out okay. And I think one of the things that made us succeed was that we didn't have any of the bad habits. This was 2013 or 2014, I think. And we tried new things, we tried new technologies, we tried remote staffing, and it ended up being very successful.
Were you looking for, at that time, specifically a property management company to buy?
I was.
Yeah. So what were you looking for as far as certain number of staff size or location? What was the criteria for you?
Yeah, it had to be in our area, and I got fortunate that we found something that was about half an hour away. It had to be not so large that I couldn't handle it. Not that I was opposed to hiring staff, but I didn't want it to be so big that I was just going to be jumping into something I couldn't control because I was still young. Had to be able to afford it, of course. But I also didn't want it to be something that brought in $20,000 a year and was just a hobby. I wanted a full-on business, and so I was very fortunate that I found that.
How did the financing work? Because you're young, right, at that time.
Yeah.
How do you end up financing that?
I used an SBA 7A loan, so they covered 80%. I got the seller to cover another 10%. And then I convinced the broker to kick in a couple percent to me because I was a licensed agent. So I negotiated that down and ended up paying less than 10% total.
Love it. Yeah, people
and I think
don't
I got
realize
some working capital too.
The SBA is a great
amazing
deal.
Yeah, as much as we love to gripe about the government, and I'm as guilty as anybody, the SBA does some amazing stuff as to start the economy. Like there are some amazing programs out there for a 7A, 504. There's a lot of good programs out there. EIDL and PPP, of course.
Let's talk about the evolution, right? Because we're talking about, so the first is you were doing short sales. Then you're like, I need a property management company to help me manage this, or I'll have my own. And then you buy a property management company. What's next?
After that, I bought another property management company that was about an hour north. Just wanting to grow faster, and that's actually what got us into HOA management. After that, the same broker who sold me the first company approached me because he had a building services company for sale that does gutter cleaning, window cleaning, power washing. Bought that company. That's the point where I bought it with partners, and that's a whole sidetrack we could get into, but that was not the best choice I could have made at the time, given that I didn't know the partners well. From there, that kept me busy for a couple of years, and then I started hiring remote staff, and I did that for myself for a few years. And then we founded.
What was the remote staff doing? Were they doing more customer support, like for you at that time? Because obviously there's certain aspects you need to be on location.
Sure.
And what were you utilizing the remote staff for? What positions?
We started with your basic customer service and admin assistant. answer the phone, take messages, type up proposals, send reminders, follow up on invoices, your basic stuff. But little by little, they began to grow with the company, and they would learn stuff. And I mean, they were, some of them are still with me, and they did amazing work. And now I have entire divisions that are run by people out of Mexico that have been with me for years. So very rewarding.
So I want to hear next what's after that, but to point out, this isn't a small business thing. You know, I'm on the phone trying to do something with United Airlines. All these big companies are doing the exact same thing. They're having staffing all over the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a perception, I think, when I talk to some people of, well, you know, I don't want to be perceived and have someone in another country, but guess what? When you call American or United, you're talking to another country a lot of times. At least I found that. So what was next?
From there, we founded Gordian Staffing. And then about a year after that, COVID hit and things really took off. After that, we founded Gordian Financial because people wanted more in-depth accounting help. And then Gordian Consulting in a similar time frame. And then in 2021 and 2022, we bought a property management company in Chicago, where you're at. We had an accounting firm, and then I bought a local website here focused on stuff for family because I wanted an excuse to do something with my kids and something that would help me learn the area more because we've only been here a few years. So
talk about Gordian Financial and what you do there.
Sure. It's a third-party accounting firm. We do everything from the tiny companies that need their corporate books taken care of to some clients we're their entire accounting department, and we have a dozen people doing AP, AR, financials, et cetera. But the advantage there is that it's customizable, and we can combine it with the full-time staff. So maybe they need a couple of customer service people, financial back office, and then they need consulting to help them map out the processes and policies they need in place.
Well, talk about the management side of things, right? Some people, a friend, let's say me, I have a hard time, you know, just there's a lot going on with one company. How do you manage all these different entities? What does your day look like?
Kind of like a squirrel bouncing on a trampoline. I just kind of go everywhere. You know, I have good people, and I trust them to get the job done, and I try my best to treat them well and keep them. I don't know if I have any real secrets as to that, other than put the right people in the right place. Is it the Peter principle that people tend to rise to their level of incompetence? And that's always misquoted. People always think that it means the dumber you are, the higher you rise. And that's not what it says at all. It says, you do your job well, you get promoted. You do your job well, you get promoted. You do your job poorly, and then they leave you there because you've been promoted beyond your skill set and training. And that gets a lot of people in trouble because you can't be scared to say, hey, you know, turns out this wasn't the best fit for you. We've got another opportunity here that could be better for you. Because you can have good people in the wrong position and it turns out poorly. And it's not their fault, it's not your fault, it was just a bad decision. So people can't be afraid to say, hey, this is not working, let's move you over here. They think they either need to just silently let them do a bad job for years, or they have to cut them. And I don't think either is the case. It certainly is in some instances. But we've had people that have moved from one company to another because they were very skilled and there was a need, and we decided to give it a try. And sometimes they excelled, sometimes they didn't. But either way, we tried our best to take care of them and give them the opportunity to grow.
Rob, let's take Gordian Financial for a second. Because you find the right people, and that makes all the difference in the world. What kind of leadership did you have to put in there so that you didn't have to be there day to day and you could have it run smoothly?
Well, it's funny that you chose that as the example, because that's exactly where I am leading day to day right now.
Okay.
As with that, the bigger the organization gets, things are no less busy. But what we do is we like to build from the ground up. We like to promote within wherever possible. And so, we like to give people the opportunity to rise, but there's also a time to go with outside hires and bring experienced people too.
Yeah. So like, I guess then we'll start there with Gordian Financial. What is the next position you're going to put in place because you've stepped out of these other businesses where you're not really managing the day to day. What is the next step? What position or person will you put in place or people for Gordian Financial so that you start to step away from that one?
At this point, we're looking for a head of account, or not a head of accounting, excuse me, a head of the company, a president or a vice president to run the division under Gordian Business Solutions. Obviously, somebody with a strong finance background, but not necessarily an accountant by trade, but they need to know enough to supervise the accounting teams we have in place.
Got it.
And that's a difficult one because that's a fun one because it's not just skills. They have to have your philosophy and your heart. They have to take care of your people. They have to have the same.
What point do you find is the right time to do that for you?
Usually 6 months before I do it. I usually wait a little too long. I've always said that I should, as a business owner, as a manager, whatever the role may be, you have to protect your time first and foremost, your time, your mental energy, all of that. And so I've always, even going back to the days of my first company, I've always asked myself, is this worth X dollars? I would take an amount, and I would put that on my time. And to start, it was $100 an hour. And at the time, that seemed so arrogant because my last job was working security, making $20 an hour. So that was a pretty ambitious leap. But it was such a great thing I did because it made me say, well, can I get somebody else to do this for me so I could focus on growing the company, focus on sales and stuff like that? And that number keeps growing. So the question becomes, number one, is the company healthy enough to bring in an outside person? You can't bring in somebody to a dumpster fire and expect them to lead with it. And the reason people get stuck in this feedback loop is because they can't get the company where it needs to go to bring in outside help. And so they keep going around in circles. So you have to get to the company to the right place. You have to be willing to let go emotionally. You have to trust somebody else with your baby. And you need the objective criteria in place to track how things are going.
Love it. So let's take the Gordian Staffing then. Mm-hmm. What were some of the key positions you had to put in place there so that you could step away?
So we have a director of operations Mexico and a vice president of customer development, and one runs the Mexico operation, one runs the U.S. operation, and then they both report to me. Got it.
There was another, we were talking before we hit record, just to give a greater understanding about what you do. There was a company, I think, that has over 700 staff. And more than 10% you helped with. What were some of the things you did there?
As with any company, we started with them a couple positions. Hey, let's give it a try. Let's see how things go. And then it was more and more and more. And then pretty soon it was 5 or 10 a month. And we just had regular onboarding days. And it was just a well-oiled machine. And same thing, to my knowledge, they've never cut a domestic employee, but it's a high turnover economy right now. People are leaving, and it also helped them create new positions that maybe they wouldn't have done without the lower cost of labor. So yeah, we've been able to partner with them for several years now, and now they have over 10% of their staff with us.
You have a high volume of, in general, helping people hire. What are some of the mistakes people make when they're hiring?
Probably the most common is that they're hiring because they need help and they don't have a clear plan of what that help looks like. They come to us because they're drowning. I need somebody. It's like, okay, great. What do you want them to do? Well, I need help. Okay, what kind of help? And that's one of the things we do is we help them walk through it and say, okay, I need somebody who's going to answer phones 50% of the time, and I'm going to have them do AP 30% of the time, and then they're going to check social media 20. We help them put it into objective criteria because too many people, they're drowning, and my heart goes out to them because I've been there. Some days I'm still there, but they don't have a plan. They don't realize it's going to take more time up front to train that person. So you actually lose productivity the first couple weeks. In time, you build your way out of it. But most people think it's kind of like a plug and play system where they just show up and fix stuff, but you have to lead. So I'd say that's the most common problem we run into.
So you'd say to someone, hey, map out all of the tasks or things you want someone to do. And if they have that, when they contact you, it'd be a much more fruitful relationship.
So something I've told people when they call me and I feel like they're not ready is I say, I'll make you a deal. I want you to take a 3x5 card or like a yellow legal pad or something and carry it around with you. Or it can be a note on your phone, pull up the notes app. Every time you think of something that I wish I had somebody doing that, just jot it down and just do that for a week or two. And at the end of it, I want you to take a look at that and see if there's a job description in there. Because it's not going to be 100%. It's going to be like 80% of the tasks max. People will say, I want a graphic designer that can also do my taxes and it's like, some things are not compatible. So you gotta make them work. But one of the best ways to get started is to just start tracking things like, oh, I wish I had done that. Oh, I wish I had somebody who did that. And just let the list accumulate and see what comes of it.
And then it sounds like people can then just categorize it and maybe there's chunks of positions within that list.
Exactly. Yep.
Love it. Let's talk about partners and some of the learnings from partners.
Okay.
You mentioned before, it's not always the case, but in that case, you had some learnings from having partners.
I did, yeah. And I got to be careful because I have a non-disparagement agreement with them. Short version is when I bought the building.
Yeah, like what would you do differently next time? I guess you could say.
Jump in front of a train before doing business with them. No, I'm well, kind of. I would have vetted them a lot closer. I was younger. The way it happened was I put my offer in for the building services company. I couldn't qualify on my own because I was broke. I didn't have enough to collateralize with for a 7A loan. And I got through due diligence. I got my offer accepted, but I couldn't qualify. So I had to withdraw. They were the second place offer, but they heard good things about me because I had talked to the seller and I got to meet some of the people. So they approached me about running it. And I was young and I was kind of awed by the idea of like venture backing and all of this. And in hindsight, it was just being foolish.
From what you're saying, it all seems natural, right? It's like they have funds, you want to run it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I didn't vet them properly. We were very diametrically opposed in our worldviews and what success meant. Not that I don't want to make money. If a business doesn't make money, it's not a business, it's a charity, which has its place too. But the difference is I wanted to put the long-term investment in. I wanted to take care of the people. I wanted to bring in raises, make things better, have a very good place to work, as opposed to coming in with the corporate raider mentality of where can we slash costs? How can we amp up production 200%? Just things like that.
How do you, it's tough and you don't have to say specifics, but sometimes it's tough to unravel those situations, because I don't know if you had ownership of it, but if you did, it's even tougher to unravel.
Yeah, and I had minority ownership, and I was also the one on the loan, and so they couldn't buy me out, but I couldn't force them out because they were majority owners. And in the end, I just had to say, "Look, this is not working. Either we all go down together, or you let me buy you out." And I had to pay through the nose at an exorbitant rate. And 5 years later, I'm still making payments. But it got us to where we needed to be. And it's a completely different world. But it was not fun.
I guess that's the conversation. So either you buy them out. Was there a consideration of them buying you out? But like,
I would have gone for that, but they didn't want to put the work. They needed a stooge to do the work. And so if I left, they would have to be there every day doing the work. And they had no interest in that.
Got it. It's tough. You also work with your wife. So how does that work out?
Oh,
you have a partner and then a partner. Same.
I do. Yeah. And there's some ways it's really good. Some days it's difficult. Bad days don't always stay at work. So that's fun. But at the same time, you have somebody who understands and appreciates what's going on.
How do you, like, for someone, I mean, there's a lot of people that work with family. What's your learnings and advice around navigating working with family?
Set clear boundaries. Don't have them as a direct report if you can help it. It's always good to have the objectivity, but at the same time, be very sensitive to your other staff, because they may feel insecure about offering suggestions or stuff like that. So it can be, it can be tricky.
Yeah, totally. It can be tricky for sure.
It can be tricky.
How is there ways that you think about, and I know it's maybe tough to do, separating that work and when you go home, or is it just you just let it bleed into whatever you're doing?
I don't think I found it yet. If you find it, let me know. Yeah.
I'm not the right person to ask about that, but yeah. I want to talk about, Rob, charitable giving, profit sharing. Talk about the profit sharing first. How do you think about that, and how do you implement?
Sure. I've always been a big believer. I am a Christian. I'm, definitely not a great one, but it's who I am, and I'm proud of it. And so for me, tithing has always been part of it. And I've always looked at that from a business sense, that should be, I started at 10% of the business's profits go to charity and 10% go back to the employees. Some companies we've raised that number, but I've always liked the idea that our interests are aligned. And rather than just, I'm doing my job, I'm getting my paycheck, the leaders of the company get to know, the better the company does, the better I do.
Love it. So in that situation, 10% charity, 10% goes back to the staff. How do you think about distributing that? Because people probably have different positions, different level, different hours. How do you, again, there's not like an exact science, but I'm just curious, how do you think about distributing that back?
That is something I'm still working on too. It's largely discretionary. We look at seniority, we look at output, stuff like that. We used to do it for all employees. We had to bring it back to the leadership team because we grew so much. It just became, you can't divide a pie that many ways. So yeah, we just look at different things. And thankfully, I've got people with me that have been with me a while, and they trust me to treat them right. And they know in the long run, they'll do a lot better.
Yeah. I have one last question, Rob, before I ask it. There's several websites, but I'll just point out two, and you can fill me in if there's any others, but GordianStaffing.com and GordianFinancial.com, I know, are the two main ones. I don't know if there's any others you want to mention that we should point people to check out also.
Those are the main ones.
Those are the big ones. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
My last question is just, running all of these businesses, just wondering what your tech stack is. What do you like to use, whether it's with email, whether it's project management, whether it's communication? What are some of the softwares you use?
Sure. So for email, we use a program called Help Scout. And it's similar to, say, Zendesk or Freshdesk. And what it is it allows us to have all of our emails in one program, and you can give people access to 7 different emails. And they work, we have multiple people in the same inbox. So most of our companies run on like client care at GordianStaffing.com. And I shouldn't have said that because now I'm going to get a ton of spam, but and we have all of our account managers and the whole client services division work out of that box, and they can assign it to whoever they need. They can leave notes. It's all in one place.
Yep.
And then
I've had Nick Francis, I don't know if he's co-founder, I think, of Help Scout on the podcast. So
no kidding.
We can check that episode out. Yep.
Well, I got some recommendations for the guy. So tell him to call me because he's got some weird stuff that needs fixing. But what else? That's a good. We use Basecamp for our task management. We're on G Suite, but we're looking at moving to Microsoft. I got my 49-inch monitor, so I love that. Although it spoils me for when I'm not here in the office when I travel. Those are the main ones.
Is there an internal communication used between offices or staff from a remote standpoint?
We use Google Chat for most things, and then Help Scout, we leave notes back and forth between one another. And so that's the way to do it. And a Zoom, of course, we use a lot of Zoom meetings and stuff like that.
And then Basecamp is more the project management side of things.
Yep.
Nice. Cool. I love it. Rob, first of all, I just want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone can check out Gordian Financial. They can check out gordianstaffing.com to learn more. And thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.